Hi, I'm Paul Cameron, Director of Brattleboro Climate Protection. We're a nonprofit organization that works closely with the town to reduce carbon emissions locally by promoting energy efficiency and renewable energy. And we sponsor a series of workshops on renewable energy here at the Marlboro Graduate Center. We've had workshops on solar and geothermal and biomass or wood heat, and this is our second annual wood heat workshop today. And the idea is to give local folks information on the latest technologies that are available for using renewables and the advantages, which are often that you can save money. For example, wood pellets are half the cost per BTU of oil heat. And it also, by using renewables, you support our local economy and reduce our dependence on foreign oil. So that's why we have the workshop here today, and we have a great group of homeowners and several landlords and small business owners to learn about all the advantages of wood heat.
And in addition to the speakers, what are folks seeing sort of in the exhibition area over here?
We have a really great group of local vendors, folks who sell wood pellet stoves and furnaces and wood pellets themselves from 3 states. We have 6 vendors, so people can come talk with the vendors, ask questions, just learn about the different types of stoves and furnaces and wood pellets that are available. We have a lot of choices and a lot of expertise in this area. We're really fortunate. So it's just the idea is to give people good information. So if you're considering a switch to wood pellets or cordwood, you have good information to make your decision. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming out. Such a beautiful day for this wood heat workshop. My name is Paul Cameron, and I'm the Director of Brattleboro Climate Protection, which is a nonprofit organization that works closely with the town of Brattleboro to promote renewable energy and energy efficiency and reduce carbon emissions locally. And I'd like to thank our sponsors, our co-sponsors, Brattleboro Thermal Utility and River Valley Credit Union and Marlboro College Graduate Center. And I'd like to introduce Michael Bosworth, Chair of Brattleboro Thermal Utility.
Sure. Again, Brattleboro Thermal Utility is a Vermont nonprofit, and we've been in existence for 6 or so years, 5 or 6 years. Our ultimate goal is to have created a district energy system for the town of Brattleboro. That's a pretty ambitious goal that would actually use wood fuel to produce heat and connect all the buildings of Brattleboro, or as many as we could, to hot water to actually then heat those buildings from 1 or more generation plants and also produce electricity in the mix. This is a type of system that's fairly common in Scandinavia and other parts of Northern Europe. It's not very common in the U.S. other than some institutional settings like college campuses. Montpelier is getting close to actually working on such a system for the town of Montpelier. So these type of systems are fairly large, complex, expensive. So right now, Brattleboro Thermal Utility is not actually working on a system yet for the town of Brattleboro. A couple reasons. The price of oil is not yet consistently high enough to make the economics work. Also, unlike Northern Europe, the U.S. government doesn't subsidize such systems, doesn't take the long-term view to make such systems worth it from the federal government point of view. But meanwhile, we're definitely interested in any kind of application that uses wood heat to heat buildings, even individual buildings. And so we're happy to co-sponsor this particular day, this particular morning. We are currently working with Barbara George, who owns 6 or so of the 3-story historic ST Organ buildings, and looking at the possibilities for using wood heat there, and that's been a very interesting project. So we definitely welcome you today and hope that you learn as much as you can for making your own decisions. If you'd like to know more about Brattleboro Thermal Utility, you just go to our website, Brattleboro Thermal Utility, all one word, .org.
Thanks, Michael. I just want to briefly go through the agenda for the morning. We're going to have a couple of presentations to start off. One on wood pellets, just general information about wood pellets, and then a presentation on pellet and cordwood stoves. Then we're going to take a short break, and you'll have an opportunity to visit the vendors next door. Then we're going to have a short presentation by a homeowner who has a pellet stove to talk about his experience. And then we'll finish with a presentation on pellet furnaces, but for larger buildings and applications. We were originally hoping to have a tour of Jason Cooper's many district energy system today. Jason wasn't able to be here today, but we're rescheduling that tour for next Saturday, the 26th, starting at 10 a.m. At Jason Cooper's office at 138 Elliott Street. So I hope you all will come out for that. Jason is a property manager on several properties throughout town. And a few years ago, he installed a pellet boiler in his office on Elliott Street. And he's gradually connected that boiler to 5 buildings and about 20 units, serving about 20 units. So it's kind of a mini district biomass system. He does a very good and interesting tour and presentation. He has a lot of data about how much money he saved from using pellets and switching from oil. So I think it'll be very interesting. I hope you all come out. That's next Saturday, the 26th, 10 a.m. at 138 Elliott Street. And now I want to, before you get started with the first presentation, I want to just introduce the vendors who are here. We have a really great lineup of folks who sell pellet stoves and furnaces and pellets. So I'm going to give each of them an opportunity to introduce themselves and just talk a little bit about some of the goods and services that they offer. And I'll start with Gary Goodemo from Friends of the Sun here in Brattleboro.
I'm going to be doing a talk in a little bit, but I own Friends of the Sun. We're on Putney Road in Brattleboro. We've been around since '76. And our primary business is wood stoves and fireplaces, along with gas stoves and pellet stoves and fireplaces. But 60% of the units or so year to year that we sell are wood. And then the pellet and gas business goes about 20% each. And it fluctuates depending on the cost of fuels. So, we do site visits and sales, and we service everything that we sell and do annual maintenance and things like that. So it gives us a good chance to see the result of what we have done year to year. So, I probably am the one that's going to talk about wood more, a little bit more than other people will talk about pellets. But I'll be talking about pellets too, because we've been doing that for 20 years, so I have some familiarity with it.
Thanks, Gary. Next we have Mark Froling from Froling Energy in Peterborough, New Hampshire.
Hello, my name is Mark Froling. I own and operate Froling Energy out of Peterborough, New Hampshire. We are primarily a commercial pellet boiler installer. We are equipment agnostic. We install 5 or 6 different brands of pellet boilers, primarily in the commercial. Town halls, private schools, public schools, NGOs. We're working in those fields right now. anywhere from 200,000 to 1.5 million BTUs has been to the power field. We have about, I think, 43 or 44 boilers out installed by now over the last 4 years, and are introducing new ways of getting the boilers in the fields as well. This year we have added a financing arm to our company where we are not just selling the boiler, but actually rather selling the service of the heat, where we will just be selling the heat only, and we will retain the boiler, the owner of the boiler. And so, trying to find new ways to sell this equipment and the product it makes.
Next we have Woody Keeney from New England Wood Pellets in Jaffrey, New Hampshire.
Well, as I said, my name's Woody Keeney from New England Wood Pellet in Jaffrey, New Hampshire. I'll be doing the first presentation here this morning. Just very quickly, we are a manufacturer of wood pellets. The owner of the company began it back in 1992, and so this is marking our 20th year as a pellet manufacturer. We have grown from a very small operation when we originally started it back then to a company that now has 3 manufacturing facilities. And so we'll be speaking more about that.
We have Andy Boutin from Pillargy.
I'm Andy, and I own and operate a company in Montpelier, Vermont called Pellergy. We design and manufacture wood pellet central heating systems and assemble boilers there right in Montpelier. I used to be located in Barrie. We've just gone through a little bit of an expansion and a changeover. So we're truly, manufacturing systems right here in Vermont, which is kind of an eye-opener for a lot of people. All of our steel work, right down to our electronic circuit boards, which are assembled up in Burlington, Vermont. So I'll talk a little bit about our systems and give you a couple case studies and answer any questions you have later on.
Great, thanks. We have Bob Latour from Sandry down in Greenfield.
Well, I'm Bob from Sandry Energy. We're right down the street here in Greenfield, and Sandry started in the traditional heating systems. We sell service every type of system, but they've got in the renewable business a couple of years ago. We sell everything from wood pellet stoves to residential wood pellet boilers up to commercial and larger big greenhouses. So we sell all types of wood pellet boilers. We also do the pellet distribution. We've got we're purchasing our 3rd trailer for bulk trailer up to 30 tons, and then we have a small residential trailer with scales. We can go around to individual houses and deliver pellets in bulk. We also do the bag pellets. We can deliver to that. We also do solar, hot water, and PV as well. So we're kind of branching off into everything, I guess.
Thanks, Bob. And finally, we have George Robbins from We Biomass in Rutland.
Morning, everybody. I'm George. I'm president of We Biomass in Rutland, Vermont. We're a full-line pellet boiler manufacturer in Vermont. We're learning all kinds of fun things about what's made in Vermont today. We just started our marketing in March. The product we sell, we license from a European manufacturer, but our boilers are made in the United States. It's a made in USA product. We do final assembly and support out of our Vermont operation. We're really happy to be in the market. We do have some unique features. We do some things a little differently. We like to consider ourselves the Ford of the pellet boiler market. We're not as fancy, we don't look as pretty, but we do a great job. We appreciate any information you'd like from us. We can support with you. We do plant tours. We're not that far away. We're an hour and 20 minutes away, so you can view our plant, meet the people that build our boilers. And as of note, we're pretty proud to announce that as of March 30th, every hire that we'll be doing going forward will be returning active duty veterans. So we're happy we made that agreement with the Labor Department and the Vermont Veterans Affairs. We're happy to do that for our troops. So, you'll have people that are mature workforce. They know what they're doing. They're happy to be home. We're happy to have them for work. Thanks.
All right, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll have plenty of time to meet and talk with the vendors. We'll have a break, and then at the end of the workshop, we'll have at least half an hour to an hour for you to visit for our cable access channel. Thank you, Frederick. I also want to mention that we have evaluations, and ask you all to just take a few minutes to fill those out before you leave today, and leave those before you go. Those are very helpful for us as we plan future events.
Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all here. Paul has done a wonderful job putting this together. Appreciate the sponsors' efforts to do this as well, because this is how it happens. This is how we make a difference in our energy world. It's bringing information to people one step at a time. And wood heat, pellet heat particularly, obviously I'm interested in that because of the company I work for. And it's the way we can make a difference in meeting our environmental and our energy independence needs. In reference to my industry colleagues that are here today, you, as the audience, have access to some really great minds. These are people who are in the business, they're passionate, they're slogging through some very tough times, but they too are making a difference, and so it is wonderful for you all to have this resource here. So these are the people that you should be talking to, and they don't know the answer, they know people who do have answers. So it's a wonderful program. Well, without further ado, I'll start my presentation. And as mentioned, I work for New England Pellet. I've been with the company 13 years. I'm the regional sales manager for New England for the company. So I've seen our company grow and change quite a bit. My main focus here today, though, is really to talk about pellets in general and to give you a little understanding about pellets and how they fit into the scheme of things. So what are wood pellets? Well, they are an alternative energy source, which is why you're here to learn more about them. They're made of wood fiber, sawdust. That can incorporate quite a variety of material. We'll be talking about quality later on in the presentation. Pellets are from our forest resource. This is our energy source that we have available to us all around us. The little picture there is just showing tons of sawdust being delivered in that particular form. So, why wood pellets? Well, at the very least, pellets keep you nice and warm and toasty. It's just a wonderful form of heat. And so it's also a dog's life as well. But if you're a person and you're paying for oil heat, and we've already heard some testimony here about oil and propane, we all know about volatility of pricing. So this is just a chart showing the barrel price of crude over the past year, and it's quite the ride. And you never know what it's going to do. No one knows. It's so hard to know. So it's just as easy to focus on what you can do about something, and again, pellets are one thing you can take control of. This is from a website, the WTRG Economics, and it's a really great website if you really want to get into more of the history of oil and charts and information, such as that chart, which shows some of the real key things that have happened over the years. You've got the oil embargo back here in the 70s, and then we get the Gulf War, things go up and then come down, Gulf War, and then more modern times, we've got the Arab Spring last year. This goes up through last year, so it's just a wild ride with what's going on in the world of energy. And on a longer term history, so this, you can really see your heart going here, way back to 1869, when oil was first coming into play, it was pretty expensive in terms of factoring for what an oil price would be. And then as you see, it's going along, it's fairly cheap, really all the way through in the 60s, and then it just started taking off again with the volatility of the world. So this is where we are today. This is a chart that our company put together trying to show how pellet heat versus the other fuels have fared. over time. So again, you're seeing the oil just shooting up, up, up. This is the pellet line. So overall pellet pricing has stayed fairly level. Obviously everything does go up, but so far pellet heat has shown itself over the years to be a fairly level situation. And this chart is also in my booth if you can take more look at that. Oh, I don't know how this is. I'm just going to put all of this up here. This is just some of the reasons that pellets really make a lot of sense in the Northeast. We've got an abundant underutilized forest and agricultural resource, and it's coming in all different kinds of forms, from chips to residues to the growing forest industry. We've got some very high energy prices. We all know that. So the thermal heat, we're dependent on fossil fuels. We already, as many of you are, you've used wood. And we've got a population that really works for potentially the bulk fuel distribution as well. And we've also got policy climate too. That's a very important thing to understand, and many of you are involved in helping that. Briefly about manufacturing. Essentially, pellet plants are wood refiners. We're taking that sawdust that you saw at the beginning, taking it, pressing it, and making a pellet. But there's a lot to doing that. You have to, when you get that material and it's coming in different shapes and sizes and textures, and it comes in, you've got to grind it down, you've got to get it into a little bit of a texture, and I have an example of these materials in my booth. And then you've got to dry it and get it ready to go into the mill. But it's basically what all mills are doing. Now some of them, like ours, our mill is what we call a standalone mill. And by that I mean we exist and then we bring in the wood fiber and then process it. There are some mills that are perhaps flooring mills, and they are already generating a lot of sawdust. And then they take that sawdust and then they make a byproduct. And then there are other mills that will just take trees, debark them, and then grind the trees down and then process that into the wood. So you have, those are really the three main ways in which material gets to become a pellet. We're manufacturing the pellets so they can be in the bag form, and a bag is a 40-pound bag, and there are generally 50 bags on a pallet, and that gives you 1 ton of product. The equivalent is about 1.5 quarts of wood in terms of heating value, or about 120 gallons of heating oil. Now when it comes to the comparison with the oil, we feel that you get more value than that, than what the industry standards state, simply because of the efficiencies of using a freestanding pellet stove where that's providing direct heat into your room. When you have a central system, you're going to lose a little bit more of the efficiency, so that may come more evenly into play. But that's pretty much the basics of making a pellet. And this is just showing our facilities. We have 3 manufacturing facilities, one in Jaffrey, and then 2 in New York. One's out by Utica, and one's in Deposit. You can see the locations there. There's a lot to a pellet plant. You need a lot of room for handling all the material, so it's all about material handling. But it's also about quality. And quality for you as a consumer is really what you need to focus on. And over the years, the industry has had some self-standards that they've tried to follow to give everyone an idea of what they really should have. And also for the mills to try to follow something to give a quality product. And that's worked somewhat well over the years. But it's gotten to a point where not everyone belongs to the trade association. Even some people that are companies that belong to the trade association, their standards didn't quite match up with what was being proclaimed. And so consumers were not really sure what they were getting in the bag of pellets. They really had to rely on the reputation of the provider that they were working with and over the years. But you didn't really know for sure. So the most important statement to understand is not all good pellets are created equal. And that just goes, there are a few corollaries to that too. Not all pellet stoves are created equal, and certainly everyone who's operating a pellet stove is not created equal in terms of their ability to understand how they run and how to optimally use them. So I'll let other people talk about those factors. I'll just talk about the pellets themselves. What are some of the key factors that you want to know about a pellet? Well, you want to know when you burn it what's going to be left over, which is your ash. You want to know how much heating value you're getting out of that pellet. You want to know what the moisture content is, because that's going to affect your heating value. It'll also potentially affect the pellet itself in terms of its stability. Some pellets are fairly high moisture, which might suggest they could crumble more easily, which gives you more fines, which then could be a problem clogging an auger at some point or other. Length of pellet is the other aspect that you as a consumer probably should be most aware, because the industry has had quite a broad range of what the length of a pellet will be. And, well, if you've got a really long pellet and you get a bunch of really long pellets, they might get into that auger in the pellet stove and clog it. And then you're going to call somebody like Gary and say, Gary, my stove's not running. And he's going to say, well, check the slider in the auger and see if there's anything stuck in there. But those are some key factors that you want to be aware of. I want to take a moment just to talk a little bit about the issue of hardwood, softwood, the blends thereof, West Coast pellets, East Coast pellets. They're all good. They all certainly have their high quality aspects to them. Some people have the thought that hardwood is the only thing they should have. Some people really like softwoods and so forth. Well, hardwood gives you the advantage of the nice long burn. Softwood gives you the advantage of a lot of heating value really fast. They tend to burn real fast and give you a lot of heat. We as a New England Wood Pellet, we strive for a blend. We work an 80% hardwood, 20% softwood blend. And the reason we like to do that is because the hardwood gives you that nice long burn time, gives you a little, with the softwood, gives you the pellet a little extra kick, ups the BTU value, plus the hardwood sawdust itself helps hold the softwood aspect of the pellet together better as well. And as a company, we're dealing with all the trees of the northeastern forest. So we're getting the oak, the beech, the birch, you name it, we're getting it. And so we have to blend. There are other mills that have fewer choices of species, especially out west, where they have big monocultural stands of trees, and so they tend to get products that are really made of only 2 or 3 species. Now, West Coast pellets are actually potentially the best pellets you could ever find. You know, Douglas fir is a wonderful product to make a pellet from. There's something about the trees out west, they just seem to have less mineral content, they hold together fairly well, they have very low ash content, and they burn wonderfully. But to get pellets from the West Coast, they're pretty expensive. East Coast pellets, well, we run the gamut. We've got the hardwood, we've got the softwood, and East Coast softwoods tend to have a fairly high moisture content, so there's some trade-offs there. And again, the whole issue of how well they hold together is still somewhat debatable. If they don't have to travel far, they hold up pretty well. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. It really doesn't make a difference whether it's hardwood, softwood. It may make a difference only in the case of your stove. Some stoves like different products, and that's just the way they are. But in terms of thinking in terms of cordwood, that thinking doesn't apply. So, the Pellet Fuels Institute. This is the trade organization that represents a lot of pellet manufacturers. This is an important website, pelletheat.org. Here you can learn a lot about the industry. especially the quality program which is being instituted as we speak. It's been a very controversial, long process trying to bring standards to a meaningful point so that, again, consumers will understand what they're buying when they go to the store. So what is it? What are they doing? The PFI has a standards program, and it's a third-party accreditation program providing standards, specifications for residential and commercial grade fuel. Heretofore, there wasn't really a third party. The mills were getting their bags tested, reporting results, and that was about the extent of it. But now there's a much more extensive program being put into effect. And it didn't come about just because everybody wanted to do the right thing. It had a lot to do with the federal government, the EPA. They've been in the process of revising what they call a new source performance standard for residential wood heaters. So in other words, when you are burning something, you're emitting particles, and they're trying to improve the efficiency of the devices such that we can improve our air quality. Pellet stoves have actually done very well over the years, but now they really want to include pellet stoves in their regulations. Now, as it says here, the EPA is not expected to create its own pellet standard for use within the performance standard, but rather it's anticipated that the PFI standards program will become the standard of reference. So the industry is trying very hard to get ahead of the curve and not have the hard, fast, heavy-handed EPA tell them what to do. And eventually this is going to be something you're going to be seeing. These are some of the other aspects of quality that we monitor: bulk density, diameter, so that's how wide the pellet actually is, durability, fines. Fines is that dust that's left over when you pour the pellets in the bag and there's a little bit of crumbling dust that gets in there. That's about. We talked about ash content, length. They're talking about being potentially up to 1.5 inches, which is still pretty long in our estimation, but it's the way it's gone. Up to about maximum of 8%. Chlorides are your salt contents. So basically, you don't want to go off and harvest driftwood and make that into a pellet, because that would give you a lot of salt. And the type of material, whether it's softwood or blend or whatever it's going to be. So this is what the industry is coming up with. So this is what you're going to be looking for. And here's the whole shebang, all the numbers. This is all on that website, so if you want to learn more, you can go to that website. So, who's who in this whole process? Well, we've talked about the PFI. They set the standards. They've hired an entity called the American Lumber Standard Committee, and they're developing all the enforcement regulations to go to the auditing agencies and the accrediting testing laboratories. These are the outside professional labs that do all the testing. The quality control handbook is being developed, and that's being provided to the pellet mills themselves, which they call us the densified fuel producers. And so, for example, within our own company, we have actually appointed a person who is going to be the quality manager. That person is separate from the plant operations. So that person, is in charge of making sure everything's getting tested and reporting the results to our company, so that we can make sure that we're doing things just fine. We've long had a quality program, but we're certainly upping it and making it in concert with what the industry is doing. So what does it mean? Well, it's testing, as I was just saying. You've got to test the incoming wood fiber, and you've got to test the finished product. That's really what it's all about. And so there's our lab. So there's a whole bunch of equipment here. I'll just run through a few pictures showing what we were able to do internally. We do send everything out to professional labs as well, but we want to have as close to real-time information as we can. One thing we can't do is determine the BTU value. That has to be determined elsewhere. Some of the equipment that we use. And it is all about the people running the machinery and understanding what they're doing. They're very much integrated into everything. So, as part of this whole process, PFI has a standards pledge, and so far 28 companies representing 42 pellet mills have signed the pledge, and saying that they're going to support the third-party audited standards and to make sure that you have good quality. There's a list. This is from the PFI website, pulled it off last night. So there they are. Those are the companies that are really trying to make this quality program work. And hopefully there'll be more. So we've talked about quality. Now we'll talk a little bit about the forest resource, now and in the future. I recognize I'm in Vermont, but most of my data that I know about is in New Hampshire. So just to give you an idea from the New Hampshire perspective, this is just an example of the trend of the forest land cover. So we still have a lot of trees, and that means we have a lot of wood available to be used in one form or another. This gives you an example of some of the products coming out of the forests. And this is New Hampshire statistics. So, things you're probably familiar with, a woodlot. You're pulling logs out, pulpwood, firewood, and chips. The wood's getting processed. This is our facility in New York State where we keep our wood chips and material that we get in undercover prior to processing it. There's an organization that's developing a plan to get to much higher use of biomass for thermal energy by the year 2025. And so there's a chart just explaining how they think we can do that. So with that information, this is where we stand here in the Northeast, and it's growing all the time. I mean, you're going to add to this all the statistics here, hopefully. So we do believe that there's room for a lot more pellet plants. There's a lot more we can do. So that's really the bottom line. I won't go into all the statistics. There's more about the bold vision for 2025. I believe that 75% of renewable thermal energy from sustainably sourced forest and agricultural biomass by 2025. That's the goal. And so their website is nebioheat.org/vision. So you can get much more into the detail of sustainability issues. So in summary, pellets reduce our dependence on imported oil. They reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They keep the fuel dollar here. Strong markets for low-grade wood keeps forests healthy. We're reducing some air pollutants. We've got a resource that truly is renewable and sustainable. So that's what pellets are all about. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention.
We have a few minutes. Anyone has any questions for Woody?
Oh, I see. Yes. Good.
Me?
Yes.
In the production of pellets, well, what is used in the sort of big-scale production? Like, do you use oil to make them? Or
Oh, okay. Very good question.
But also, in the pellets themselves, is anything added, like some sort of adhesive?
No, there's, first of all, in terms of the question being, is there any binders added to the pellets themselves in the process? In our manufacturing facility, the answer is no. We do not use it. We use some vegetable oil that helps the wood actually go through the dyes, and I actually have a piece of the machinery that makes the pellet here on my table. But that's the only thing. And we do maybe some water also to help lubricate the dye, the wood, as it goes through, but that's not adding it to make it a binder. It's really the pressure. The pellet, the sawdust, when it goes through the The die is about 60,000 pounds worth of pressure. So and it comes out, and all it's holding is pressure. You drop the pellet in the water, and it will go back to sawdust. So that's the other thing. When you have pellets, you want to keep them nice and dry. Then your other question about the overall, how we actually, the operations of the company. Well, electricity is what runs the machinery. We have been working with another company that is from Houston, Texas, which built a facility next to our Jaffrey facility, which has been trying to develop a wood turbine technology such that it would be far more efficient than the current wood electric technology that we have. And if that were the case, if they'd be able to get it successful, we would be able to take our electricity from that plant, basically off-grid electricity, and run our drying system. Our drying system is run on wood, so we take a percentage of the sawdust that we make and dry. It goes back into the burner, which is basically a big campfire, and 1,700 degrees, and we heat the next slug of wood that's coming in to make the pellets. So that is our effort, trying to be green in that sense. Okay. Yep.
I have a question about creosote.
Yes.
I know with wood, one of the problems has been with using, especially in New England, with using regular wood to burn, if it's not properly encased in some sort of asbestos or some sort of, maybe not asbestos, bad word, but some sort of container, it could cause a backup and
Okay.
fire.
All right, so the question is more or less about issues of creosote and so forth. Well, with pellets, you're taking the very clean wood, so you're not dealing with bark primarily. And bark is where your impurities are located. So when, as a cordwood burner, you want to, that's where you have your problems, because the bark has got a lot of impurities in it, and that's what doesn't burn very well, and that's where you get your chemical reactions. Whereas with pellets, you're dealing with the cleaner inner wood of the material. Plus, you're also with a much more controlled burn in the way the pellet stove actually works. I think Gary can talk a little bit more on his presentation on how the pellet stoves are going to work with the pellets. Okay.
Yeah, one of my concerns about pellets is to do with tree harvesting and leaving behind tops and so on is an issue. And what do you do about guaranteeing that the land is being managed sustainably?
Well, that's what this organization is talking about in terms of the renewable and sustainability. That's a work in progress as far as trying to respond to that. But there is a group that is working very hard on developing that plan. Very serious forestry folks trying to get into that question. Now, as far as most mills right now are taking material that's coming from some other process. Now, there are some mills that, as I mentioned, are taking trees, logs that are coming in, and then debarking and then chipping and processing accordingly. There are no mills deliberately going out and going over to a forest over there and cutting a bunch of acreage and then hauling that in specifically for pellets. Right now that's not the way that the industry is working. Now out west, you've got huge areas where there's a certain pine and fir trees that have been killed by a beetle infestation, and they have tremendous areas, and they're desperately trying to figure out how to harvest that wood and make it into pellets, and there are companies that have sprung up for that purpose. But it's a race against time, and of course out west, the fire dangers are enormous. Their issues are going to be a little different than what we have here. Let's see, let's go over here.
How much of a problem is ash disposal?
With the clean wood materials that are being made with a quality pellet, there's none. The ash can be deposited out in the garden and the lawn without problem.
I just wanted to follow up on the source of the pellet wood. I started looking into this about 7 or 8 years ago, and at that point, pellets were hard to get. People were talking about shortages and not being able to supply, and the fear was we were gonna start cutting down fresh trees
Yeah.
just for pellets, and the whole idea
Yeah.
that attracted me was that this is waste wood
Yeah.
that could, what a beautiful way to keep using our resource. So I still am concerned that as it gets more popular
Mhm.
and you build more manufacturers, that's gonna be the ultimate
Yeah.
outcome.
Well, those are valid questions, and the question being about truly what is the sustainability of pellets as they become more popular. I'm not the best expert to talk about the volume of wood that's being produced out here, but there is a lot of wood. It is amazing to see the numbers when they talk about how much wood is actually being produced. And if we get to the point where the experts who can talk about sustainability and watch the rates and look at the trees that are cut, they don't have a full answer on that. But it's a valid question. Now, as far as the shortages and the demand goes, some of that was kind of artificially shortages, because what happens is when you get that volatility up and down, well, that's hard for a business to plan for. And it's like when there's a problem on a boat and everybody runs to one side of the boat and it tends to tip. And so the industry, after some of the oil shocks which generated the very quick demand, went out and started building plants. That's what we did. It takes 2 years to build a pellet plant, basically, and so you really have a long process to get ahead of getting ready to do that. So it's not easy being in the energy business, especially when you're just this small and the energy business is like this. Okay, another one in front here.
I've got 2 questions. The
Yeah.
first is you showed on one of your charts a pellet plant being built in Vermont. Is that your company that's building a pellet plant in Vermont?
No,
Or
we're
is
not.
that-
No. We our pellet plants are in New York State in Jaffrey.
Who's building
There's an existing plant in Vermont, Vermont Pellet. I know Gary carries their product, and they're up in the Rutland area. And there's been discussions about a couple other plants in Vermont, and they're in various states of the permitting process. So that slide could have been a little bit out of date as far as precisely where that is today.
Okay, my second question is, you talk about the energy contained in the fuel. I mean, we talk about how do you define the BTU?
Okay, by the pound.
By the pound?
By the pound. Typically, a pellet will be in the 7,900 BTUs to
Per
maybe
pound?
8,400 BTUs per pound. There are some pellets that companies will say, well, they're 8,900 BTUs, but then that's where you as a consumer have to ask, well, is that including the moisture in it, or is that moisture-free? There are little games that, statistics, it depends on how you interpret them. Yes, please.
Is there anywhere along the burning process or the handling for the home, for the end user, that the fine becomes a problem?
Well, there are a couple things. Depends on how fussy you are. If you got the 40-pound bag and you're dumping the pellets into the hopper of your stove, there is always going to be a little bit of very fine dust that's going to kind of waft. There are some products, and every once in a while, we have a quality problem, and there's a big cloud. And that's something that consumers, you're not going to like in your living room. Of course, if you've been used to using coal or wood, the pellets is going to be a breeze. But it's an issue. That would be one issue potentially.
But there's no volatility?
No volatility. Yes, in fact.
Oh, do you know if the companies, the lumber companies that provide the wood to the pellet companies, do they attempt to replace the trees that they're taking down or whatever with small trees, replanting?
Right, reforestation. So the question is about reforestation. That I really can't speak to. I know in this area we work with Sasimo, which is of course a major lumber company. It's really, you were harvesting off of land, but the value of having a place for the lower valued wood to go is that helps landowners who want to be in the forestry business, helps them then know that they're going to have a market. So it's not just taking a section of land, logging it, and then developing it later on. It's about all I can say. And here.
You said that pellets don't have bark. and so they don't have, you know, the impurities that cause
Right.
produce soap
Yeah.
problems. Excuse me, does that mean that they also cause fewer air pollution problems than wood burning?
That is correct. They are more efficient, and so up until recent times, the EPA has felt that the pellet stoves are clean enough that they have not wanted to regulate them. But they're going to go another step forward now and get more into the regulation of pellets just as they tighten up the air standards. The pellet stoves are doing really well because when you start up a pellet stove, you might see a little bit of smoke just at the initial start, but then after that, you don't see it. So it is really clean. Well, okay, right here.
In terms of air pollution, since we're talking about this, how do pellet stoves rate versus oil? Are they, you know, I think one of the charts that is they reduce greenhouse gas emissions, so is it something like 10% less than oil, or I mean, what are the statistics?
Okay, the statistics about the cleanliness of pellets versus oil in terms of air emissions. I don't know that I have the exact number on that. But pellet stoves are generally operating in the 85–90% efficiency rate, and oil furnaces, unless you've got one of the really new ones, is a lot lower in terms of efficiency.
Well, that's efficiency. I'm talking about air pollution.
Well, your efficiency, though, is going to tie into your...
Probably.
Sure.
You know, depends on the pellet stove, but the best pellet stoves produce about less than a gram an hour of emissions, so hardly any particles. So you can stand and look at a vent and not see anything coming out. On older oil burners, I don't know what the number is, but that's soot that comes from an oil burner, and so there's particles and size of particles that can be a real problem, you know, on a big area basis. Now the newer and more efficient is what Woody is saying, I think, is that the newer and more efficient oil burners and systems are going to produce hardly any particulate into the air too. In a lot of cases, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes, but in a lot of cases, the big problem isn't the new stuff that's coming out now, the new stuff that we're all putting in now. It's the old stuff.
Yeah, because my neighbor heats with wood pellets, and there's a lot of smoke coming out of his chimney all the time.
Well, he's got a problem then, of some other kind. So maybe.
Just have a couple more questions.
Yeah, okay, let's see, I'll go at the end there.
Yeah, I'm an oil burner. So I have an unlined chimney. Is there a need to flue line that?
If you're using a chimney to vent your pellet stove, you're going to need to do that. Now, the other thing about pellet stoves is, and you'll learn a little bit more about that, is pellet stoves can be direct in and out a wall. So you can save a lot of money if you've got a spot where you can put that stove without having to line the chimney. But that's why you go to a quality stove shop, is to get the technical advice on what's the right thing to do given your situation. So I guess I get one more question. Right there.
I thought I saw one table that said that the demand for pellets is a lot higher than the capacity to produce them. Is that?
It potentially could be that. It's
So does that make
energy's
the price
volatile.
go up?
There's a lot of, right now, mills, especially this last year with the warm weather, mills were not operating at capacity. So it means they weren't producing as much inventory to meet demand. So if we have an oil shock come this fall, you know, the industry, you know, it could be dicey, but there's still a lot of pellets out there.
So could that make the prices go up?
Sure. Supply and demand, yeah.
There's one thing, like, I think a lot of people thought, like 4 years ago, the price of pellets skyrocketed because it was all of a sudden price of oil hit $4 a gallon. Everybody and their brother went out and bought a pellet stove. People were buying 2 or 3 years supply of pellets, so the industry wasn't prepared for that.
Right.
And I think, like New England Wood Pellets, since then, they've built an extra plant, they've added capacity to their plants. There's a lot of other resources out around, and if the price of oil goes up, or if they take their pellets, raise the price, someone from Canada will start, trailering stuff in. So I think it's pretty much, I've been in the business since that time when the price came down 3.5 years. And our bulk pellet price is the same as it was 3.5 years ago.
So it's been consistently.
It's been consistent, and every time if there is a void, if someone raises their price, somebody else is there to fill in the need. So yeah, they might not have here, but then they'll ship it on rail cars from the Midwest. So it's been pretty consistent as the graph shows. But if everybody went out and bought a 2-year supply of oil, stocked it away, what would happen to the price of oil? You know, they'd run out too.
I've got something to add to that too as well. I mean, you have to realize that the oil industry is the oil industry. It's a big machine. When whoever or whatever decides the price of oil is going up, it's going to go up. These are all independent producers. They all compete with each other. So instead of having 3 large oil companies producing oil, we only have to compete with 3 people. I don't know if they sit around a table every month and decide what the price is going to be, but that's what it seems like. These guys can't do that, okay? Because if they raise their prices, as he said, in a year and a half, someone could have a plant next year and compete with them. So it's not, you don't have to build a refinery. It's not as big of an investment as the oil companies are. Nobody can compete with big oil on a small scale. And that's why you also don't see the big oil companies in the pellet business, because they can't compete against all of these small guys and get the profit. So that's an important thing to realize too, is these are local guys. They're a lot more flexible. They can respond a lot faster, and they have to compete with a lot of people just like them. So, you know, I would say that unless something drastic happens, you know, if oil trends way up, pellets are going to trend up slower. You know, so you're going to get spread out.
Thank you all for your questions.
Yeah, good
These are great questions. Speaker Gary Goodman from Princeton.
Thanks for coming, everybody. I told you a little bit about who I am and my company and everything. I didn't mention I have 14 people that work for me, and we really try to go through the whole process with people of trying to assess their heating needs and looking at their situation and seeing what it's going to take to, well, for one thing, we deal in products that are 3 different fuels, wood, gas, and pellets. Pardon?
Could you speak up a little hard of hearing?
Sure.
You can step in.
Yeah.
That's great.
So we deal with 3 different fuels, and you know, there's different reasons for doing different things. I realize a lot of people are here to talk about and think about pellets. They're not for everybody. Wood's not for everybody, and gas is sometimes the last fuel in the stair step or whatever you might say. And so we really try to assess people's situations and see what's best for them and see what people want. People have different reasons for doing different things. Some people wouldn't burn gas if you gave it to them. And all of us in the store pretty much heat with wood and pellets, and so we're very familiar with it, and we have our philosophical reasons and economic reasons for doing what we do. So anyway, I'm probably not going to talk about anything that I have on my list here, but the first thing I wanted to do was just thank the sponsors today, and thank Paul especially. As Woody said, this is sort of we have sort of world-class experienced people in the room, and which is amazing for a town to do. I've been to conferences where there isn't any more expertise than there is in this room, so it's really great. I appreciate it. Good job. When people come into the store, we talk about what they might need, what they might want. And a lot of times people have decided already what fuel they want. Sometimes people want to talk about cost, and I thought I had plenty of copies of this yellow sheet for everybody, and it looks like they came up quite a bit short. But
big stack of them back.
Oh, there is? Okay, can you feed those forward, please? So this chart is not meant to be precisely accurate, and I'm sure that many of my fellow professionals can find lots of things about it that are wrong. But the source of this calculator is hearth.com, and that's Craig Izod's website, and he's really great. If you go to hearth.com, you can use this calculator. It's just a small program, and you can put in the numbers, you know, as you want to check them out. I put in a cost of oil and a cost of propane that I got from the people that I buy from yesterday. So it's current in that respect. But especially with propane, there's a lot of variability in how you buy it and what you pay. So, apparently in both the case of oil and propane, there are some decreases coming along, and some of them are coming along maybe Monday, you know, so it's hard to know on any given day. And then on this chart, I put the efficiencies, and that can be that can vary quite a bit, as Woody also said. The oil burner efficiency that Hearth.com was using as sort of the default, the 78%. Well, there's some stuff that's up in the 80s, the high 80s even, and then there's furnaces and boilers out in the field that are down in probably the 60% range, which is crazy but true. And then when you look at the chart under appliance efficiency, hardwood, the stoves that we sell are non-catalytic, high efficiency, and they're going to be in about the 65 to 70% range, something like that. Older stoves, though, can be as low as 45%. They can be lower than that. There's an estimate that I've heard that 80% of the stoves that were ever sold are still out there today and still being used. Sometimes not very much, but sometimes a lot. And so there's a lot of stoves, as you were asking about, a lot of stoves that are putting out as much as 30 to 40 grams an hour of particulate. So that's black smoke when you see it coming out of the chimney. Whereas the stoves that many of the people in the room have, they put out about 3 or 4 grams an hour. Some stoves put out as little in the labs as 1.5 or so grams an hour. So that's when you look at a chimney that is rated, where a stove is rated that low, you don't see smoke coming out of the chimney, or you might see moisture coming out of the chimney, but that's it. So that's a pretty huge decrease, you know, down from 30 grams an hour to 3 grams an hour, 4 grams an hour. So the big problem these days with heating with wood or with pellets is not the stuff that's being put in now and has been being put in for the last 20 years. It's the stuff from 30 and 40 years ago, and that can be really bad. So, and then so the pellet efficiency there, that's 75. I mean, there were stoves that we sold 20 years ago that had so much air going through them that I bet you they were down around 60% efficiency, something like that. The best efficiency of a stove that we sell now is the Mount Vernon from Quadrifire, and that's about 81% efficiency. So that's really good. And it has to do with a lot of different things, but it's a more complicated appliance. And then propane appliance efficiency, you know, that's probably an efficiency that when you look at that, that's kind of run-of-the-mill efficiency. Now there's condensing furnaces and things like that that run up 91, 92, and they say bigger numbers than that. So, but I would say that if you're looking at some average of what's in the field, that could be about right. So I'm not going to try to go through this chart with you piece by piece, but the point I wanted to make with it is that relatively speaking, those are their ideas about what you could save. And then the next part down, the cost of heating a mid-sized house using space heat. I made that assumption. So a lot of people have been talking about replacing space heaters with central heaters, or replacing central heaters with pellet central heaters or wood, let's say. So when you heat with a central heater, you're trying to heat that cubic foot of space over there the same as that cubic foot of space over there. So you're trying to heat every cubic foot of space you have to the same temperature, theoretically. Right? So that's called comfort. And efficiency, maybe. Well, if you have a stove over there, you're not going to heat that area there to the same temperature as that area over there. That's the way it is. So part of what you save when you go to a central heat, or I'm sorry, a space heater, like if you heat with a wood stove or a pellet stove or even a gas wall, is you don't heat as much space. So you're not as comfortable everywhere in the house necessarily. It may not be as convenient as if you're feeding automatically, say with pellets, or even feeding by hand with wood in the basement. But it's another big savings. So I put down a number of 25%, because I think that's probably a reasonable number to figure. I don't know if I'm right. I don't know, Woody, have you ever heard a number that anybody put out there? I mean, Craig Isot, I think, has talked about it a little bit. I think he said about 25%, but it's anybody's guess, because some people would heat one room instead of 4 rooms. You know, some people would try to heat the whole house from one spot and almost make a space heater into a central heater. So, you know, it's kind of across the board. But my point there is to just say that some of the savings can be from not heating as much space. And it's kind of individual houses that tell you whether that's right or not. And, you know, it might be that over time people get sick of that and they want to heat all their space again to the same temperature. I mean, that certainly would be the role of and the goal of a central boiler, you know. And there's a lot to be said for that. So anyway, I just wanted to put this out there as I really haven't done it this way before. I kind of avoid it, and you know, I may regret that I ever did this because what I've, you know, this comes back from my old solar water heating days. I didn't ever like to put stuff like this down on paper because if people didn't get the results that the piece of paper said they should, I always felt like, you know, they were going to come back at me and say, you know, I saved this instead of that. Well, you know. So anyway, take it for what it is. You can burn it when you get home if you want. Yeah, right. I won't sign this. But this might be a good point of departure for people's questions. And I don't know that I have a lot else that I want to say. Maybe just quickly, as I said, wood stoves are now high efficiency. They're generally non-catalytic, so they don't have a catalytic combustor in them, which makes them simpler. They're sort of passive. You don't have to do a lot. They're easy to use. They hold a fire for a long time. They burn cleanly without a lot of messing around. And several of the people here in the room, I know, have wood stoves that we put in that are like that. And they're head and shoulders above the old stoves. And they're head and shoulders above the catalytic stoves even, I think. So, Then on pellet stoves, there's basically two kinds. Underfeed is one, not so common. Overfeed is the other, top feed. Top feed stoves feed pellets down into a basket. And the idea there is you get an air-to-fuel mixture that's not too rich and not too lean, so it's adjustable. So if you see somebody that has a pellet unit and it's belching smoke that you can see seemingly all the time, their air-to-fuel mixture is wrong. It's somehow or other, if their chimney might be partially clogged, so there's not as much air going through, and that would be one thing, and that's the usual cause of that. But that's true of any combustion appliance. You know, if you see a lot of smoke coming out, it's probably either on the intake side or the outflow side. The air coming in or the exhaust going out is being restricted somehow or other. Usually that's a cleaning issue, and you know, with pellet stoves, I would say the vast majority of the problems that we have are related to cleaning. Kevin was saying he found the cleaning a little onerous. Most people that have used wood stoves find it to be a relief. But sometimes people that haven't used wood stoves in the past or wish they weren't using wood stoves anymore find pellet cleaning to be a little harder than they wish. And I can't make it any easier, but basically consistent cleaning is the key. So it takes a couple of minutes every day, and then periodically you have to do a little bit more cleaning, you know, which sounds easy when I'm saying it, right? But I think most people that have pellet stoves find it to be not too bad and easier than wood. So that was the top feed stoves. The bottom feed stoves, the difference there is that bottom feed stoves push pellets along a sort of a tunnel, maybe you could say, and they generally push the ash over an edge or something. And so instead of the ash accumulating in a little basket, a burn pot, and you have to clean it out occasionally, they actually push the ash right over an edge, and so the ash doesn't interfere with the burning, and you sort of have to see it. And I wish I had a little slideshow to show you, but I don't. And what's happened is that Harman was the owner of that technology. They had the patent. They let the patent lapse, and other companies are starting to make stoves like that now. But they had a patent on any underfeed pellet stove, which was really kind of amazing. It's like patenting the color blue or something, you know. And so now other companies can build those. We have two companies that are starting to make them. They basically make the maintenance even easier than it is. And it's ironic a little bit because, as Woody indicated, and as we see on the market, you know, pellets now are lower ash content, better quality than they've ever been. And so you don't have to deal with as much ash as you used to. And they're starting to make stoves that make dealing with ash easier. So it's hopefully going at a problem that isn't there or won't be there as much anymore. So that's a little bit of a capsule like that. The you know, pellet stoves are convective, not radiant so much. Wood stoves are more radiant than convective. So pellet stoves depend on electricity. Wood stoves don't usually. Sometimes fireplace inserts with wood, you know, they have blowers, and so they operate better with electricity, but they still operate without it. With a pellet stove, for the very most part, I mean, we have one that will run on a battery, and that's it. There's almost no pellet stoves will run on batteries. So a lot of people get generators that are in areas where they lose power relatively frequently. In my opinion, it's not a good idea to choose a stove based on that time that you didn't have electricity, you know. But it doesn't happen very often around here, realistically. But everybody has their things, you know. Some people wouldn't get a pellet stove because they use electricity. I think that's too bad, but you know, that's the way it is, and everybody has their reasons for doing things. So, Pat.
How many electric motors does a pellet stove use? Last time I checked it, I believe they said 3.
3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Yeah, it depends. There's a combustion blower to make the air go through it, to burn. There's a convection blower to push the heat into the room. There's an auger motor, which is really a small, you know, geared motor that pushes or turns the auger and feeds the pellets.